Welcome to the Dragon's Den. I'm your venerable host, Orochi, and today we're going to continue our journey into the impossible lands with the sizable island of Jalmeray and its smaller island around it. I'm going to try and make this fairly smaller and more bite-sized for the smaller folks, as I know going into a lot of detail in just one session seems to be a little bit too much. So we're just going to go over an overview of all of Jalmeray, and then we'll get into the major places, the cities that these books go into in depth in the next couple videos. So the capital is Niswan, which we'll get into in the next one. As always, and I will continue to make this point in every video, I think the numbers for people who live in these areas is very, very off. Even if you don't consider, the massive expansion of people that Earth has had since the Industrial Revolution and all that stuff, even 1,000 years ago, there was still sizable cities, and especially in Jalmeray, that is heavily religious. There are clerics and oracles and just divine casters all over the place. So you gotta think, around every corner is somebody who can cure diseases and heal you and protect you from age's ravishings and all that kind of stuff all over the place. So in a place like that, there's no way that people don't live longer lives and tend to have more kids, so the population would be higher in a place where you can, in one way or another, either alchemical or magically mimic the benefits of not even modern day technology, but even, just a few hundred years ago's technology would dramatically increase populations. And so when I look at these sort of numbers here, I'm always disappointed. But anyhow, Jalmeray is sort of like a giant mixing pot. They've got a lot of different people. We've got catfolk, Garudas, genies, Uruksi, Kashirshi, Lokath, Naga, Nagaji, Ratajin, Ratfolk, Vanara, Vishkanya, and Vudrani. Those are the major peoples. This is also a major hub for travel. So, especially with Geb opening its borders and trying to make good on trade and stuff, people can kind of just swing out to Jalmeray on their way by as like a tourist trap kind of thing, because they have the factions over here, Houses of Perfection. This is a heavily martial arts themed area too. It's sort of like, it's got some Middle East themes because they have Rajas, and it's also got some ancient Chinese themes because the Houses of Perfection and all of the smaller sorts of things are just like dojos everywhere. They're just, everybody who has a fighting style becomes a master and teaches other people their fighting style, and so you have all of this sort of society that's based around, what house are you part of or trained to be part of, or what minor house are you a part of, and what kind of fighting styles do you do. And they have the grand tournament every decade. That is the tournament of Wind and Sky. And then seeing how much of a massive tourist attraction that is, they also hold countless smaller tournaments to try and keep that sort of revenue for their country going, where at all times you want to go there to see the spectacles. And this land is full of spectacles because the rest of these factions are more just really attuned to the major city and a little bit of the country in general. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But you look at the religions, and this is only a small sampling of the major religions, because every religion is welcome in Jalmeray. Everyone, even evil religions, have a place in Jalmeray, because their major city, Nizwan, accepts Rakshasas as citizens. That alone says a lot about how much they are open to literally anybody can go and live there, which is amazing. And it's just like, yeah, as long as you can fit in and don't cause trouble, then you are welcome there. So that's fantastic. But they have dozens and dozens of religions, and they even say, as like a local custom, that gods are born in Jalmeray, and they also die there. Like lots of little gods, people who are rising in power beyond, mortal means, but then just fizzle back out because of one reason or another. And, that's their kind of flavoring there, is that people go there. There's lots of people of power here, which you would think would be difficult for a government to control, but since they're usually like guilds, basically, because the houses of perfection are heavily controlled by the master of the house. So they're basically like fighting guilds, and to really reach your perfect method of fighting and being powerful, you generally want to join these places just for training and research, and because a lot of them also use magic. They're not just, martial arts punching stuff. The four major houses all use very different styles of fighting, and I think two of them heavily rely on magic, which is very interesting. And I don't think it works so well with the rules, but as a GM, I would totally bend the rules some to give somebody like martial advancement while also being a caster, which they do have the archetype, and I haven't gone over all the details of the reprinted archetype in this, but I'm definitely going to do that before we get done this whole section, because I've played through the Fist of the Ruby Phoenix playing as a druid who took the perfection archetype to get the boost in martial proficiency and also some cool abilities as well. So I am very interested to go over how they've changed that archetype with a fine-tooth comb. Because I know they obviously reduced the Fists of Thunder ability because it was broken beyond all comparison, but I don't think anything else in it really needed much tweaking. So we will see. But you have to think of, they have all these religions, and one of the big parts to notice that they make note of, especially in this one, is that all of these religions have holidays. So almost every day is a holiday to some religion on Jalmeray. Like, the capital generally represents more religions than the smaller outposts and stuff, but even still, there's bound to be a holiday somewhere at every time. And that's fascinating to think about. Imagine having so many religions that every day is a holiday for somebody. So there's constantly going to be gatherings and like parades and just, people of that religion showing off and doing things, unless, it's more of a quiet sort of solemn celebration kind of thing. But just that means there's constantly amazing, like, sideshow-esque sort of things going on, especially in the capital, and that's really interesting to think about. Over here we have the resources that are available in Jalmeray, which is a little bit of everything. They pretty much do everything. Their main source of food is fishing because they have a rather large fishing village, and they're surrounded by water, so that's always a good thing. And they also do really nice ships. Could always exotic spices is always the thing in very non-Eurasian, like European sorts of places. I'm I'm not sure I feel that's really appropriate. It's one of those things that's just like, it's a little weird, but fine. And they also do luxury stuff because they do sort of have a caste system, but it's much more like American, where it's like your money is how powerful you are, even though there is a strong semblance of like old guard that really stick hard to the sort of more rigid caste system, and it's like the colonialist sort of things, because colonialism happened here and they're still dealing with the fallout of that. And here we have a map of the island. And the history of Jalmeray is that the people of Vudran, I think it was Vudran, came here and started a colony. At the same time, or around the same time, there was some archmages from Nex who were outcast, who went here because they were becoming too powerful for Nex to control, or maybe they were too radical in the things that they liked doing, or whatever. But some extremely high level mages came here and basically decided, hey, you guys do your colonializing thing, take all this shit over, and we'll run everything. And so they gathered up all the native population, put them on Kanakataka Island, and then basically dropped a magical fucking nuke on it, killing like 99% of the local population. Only very few managed to survive, and then after that, I think the Vudran people were kind of like, yeah, that's not cool. So I can't remember his name, but their leader at the time took all his people and some of the remaining natives, and they moved back to Vadran, and they were just like, yeah, you guys are fucking nut jobs, and we want nothing to do with this shit. So then the Archlords of Nex ruled over the people that couldn't leave for quite a long while, until the descendants of the leader returned with more Vadrani and the old descendants of the original peoples here, after the Archmages had all either died or been killed. They all were... Crap, I don't remember. I think they were all killed save one who ran away. But that might have been something else. But they populated this island, and then just basically opened it up to everyone who wanted to come here. And so we can see, we got some nice river going in. We've got all these islands. We've got what is it? Grand Saret was the original capital that got abandoned, so now it's home to thieves and people of ill report, and anybody who can force a living there can live there. And Vidasha is where they've re- refurbished all of the buildings that were there, that were made in the by the Nexian Archmages or the people back then, because I think there was like several hundred years between when they first came to colonize and then left, and then there was a few hundred years in between. So when they came back, they refurbished all this stuff, and now Vidasha has not monasteries, but basically schools there for arts and crafts and cooking and politics a little bit, like court sort of things, how to, behave in court and all that good stuff. So lots of high learning going on there, which is always sort of cool. It's like a bard college where they teach occult magic and all this other skill stuff. So that's super cool. And then up here, the other offshoot island is Govella, which is used as a sort of leper colony because there is a faction of self-righteous sort of monks that find people who have been cursed either by Rakshasa or by Jinn that also live in the cities here and that sort of thing. They take these people and they basically cage them up on this island and make it so that they can't leave because they're trying to keep everybody else pure from all this dark magic stuff, which is, as you can imagine, kind of a controversy with some other groups. When we get to Nissan, we'll go over them, but there's quite a few different like vigilante groups that are going on here, which is very interesting that there's open vigilanteism. So it said as so long as they don't interfere with the guard, then they won't be arrested, which is very interesting. So that just screams, adventure opportunities right there, where you've got all these different factions. Because normally when you have different factions in a city or whatever, it's usually just like the mob, the gangs, or, religious zealots, or, evil politicians or whatever. And you can go through all these. But a lot of the factions here are more a little bit religious, but then counteracts to that sort of stuff, and that's rather interesting, especially since most of the vigilante groups are rather supported by the populace. So that's, very interesting. Then we have lots of jungle. When we get into Niswan, it's almost all the information of Jalmeray is contained within Niswan. Niswan is the largest section of the Jalmeray in this book. But I think it's interesting to point out that when it goes over some of the cultural aspects here about the way that people dress and stuff, like they make mention that the people wear loose-fitting stuff and they tend to wear turbans and that sort of thing. And so, especially with having Rajas and Rakshasas around, it gives a very Arabian sort of feel to it. But when you look at this map, there's literally no reason to have any semblance of like Arabian flavor to this because it's all jungle and grasslands. Like, I'm very much the sort of don't take any real world cultural stuff and put them in a completely different area that has nothing to do with the things that spawned that culture. Because Arabian culture comes from being in a desert area. So if you're putting that in a non-desert area, it's like, would that culture have grown in that way at all? And like, would people dress that way at all? Look at the way people dress in actual jungle areas on Earth, and then just like, there's a reason why a lot of the popular and effective dress methods of cultures are the way they are, and it's because of their environment. So I love that they are highly value color. Everybody wears lots of different bright colored stuff, and everything is super vibrant in the cities. It's super cool, but when it just adds certain cultural things that I'm just like, I don't think this is the kind of area where that would have come from. I don't know anything about Vudran, so if Vudran is north close to Osirian, which is a desert area, if it's close to that, so then that's the culture they came with and they just brought it here, then that'd be fine. But I don't know a whole lot about Galarian other than what's been printed so far in second edition. So that's kind of my thoughts on that sort of thing. I do hope we get lots of books on them, though, because, as I've said before, the Lost Omen books are so dense with just information to bring this world alive. And that's fantastic. It's also interesting to think of this as being like a melting pot and a hub, and lots of people come here for maybe vacations or maybe probably not pilgrimages. As much as they accept every religion, I don't think they have a lot of like religious significance in any of the places that are built here. Yeah. But that is our quick intro to Jalmeray. Next, we will get into the depths of what living in Nisan is like. Until then, be well.